Scotland forever! One of James's spies brought him news of a large body of the English troops, said to number around 1,000 men, advancing south through Cunningham towards Kyle in Ayrshire. James had 60 men at most, so there was no point of thinking about even attacking the English. Yeah, he did it anyway. He knew the English needed to advance down a route called Mackwornock. This route crossed marshland and was a very narrow place to go on as well, so it was perfect for an ambush. The Scots laid an ambush all night, and the next day they caught a glimpse of the glare of the armour and weapons of the English, and as soon as the English advance ranks were in view of the Scots, the rest of the English army were in tight ranks. As the army crossed the ford, James and his men rushed at them and forced many into water. Other Scots in the bushes and tall grasses fired arrows into the ranks of the English, causing a massive confusion, and the English tried to retreat, but they couldn't go forward, left or right due to marshy terrain. They could only go backwards, but the English at the back didn't know what was happening, so they were still pushing forward, causing the ranks to panic. The leader of the army, Sir Philip Mowbray, forced his horse forward, cutting his way through the Scots. One Scot tried to pull him from his horse by grabbing his belt, but luckily for Mowbray, his belt snapped and he managed to escape the fight. And after the fighting, 60 English lay dead, with the rest retreating to Bothwell Castle. It is also around this time that Barbour tells us that James had met up with Robert the Bruce and Edward Bruce. They were told by Robert he had been attacked by the English troops that were under the command of Aymer de Valence, but had managed to escape the fight alive. The whereabouts of Valence camp was still unknown. However, James had seen an English camp while on his way to this very meeting, and also that the English would be easier to attack since they seemed unprepared for a sudden attack and were scattered about. Around 140 Scots made their way to the English camp and found that the English were around 200 strong in a local village. There was no holding back. They stormed every house, killing every Englishman they could find. Then they disappeared into the darkness, into the dawn. Valence was helpless in this face of guerrilla warfare, no matter how large or equipped his army actually was. At the start of May 1307, he discovered that Bruce's army of around 600 men, which included James, were encamped at Galstone in the Loudoun Valley in Ayrshire. Valence issued a challenge to Bruce by saying, "Stop camping, you little bitch, and fight me like a man." Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, but it does show the arrogance of the English, asking Bruce for a fair fight after lying to Bruce at Methven. But Bruce wasn't a bitch, unlike Valence, and did not lie, and he said, "Meet me, bro, at Loudoun Hill on the 10th of May. Now, if you've seen Loudoun Hill, you'll know it's massive. The biggest parts are 1,000 feet high, and easily the most defensive spot in all of south of Scotland. Bruce, being Bruce, did not pick that spot. He went, big hill, let's fight at the bottom of it. Bruce was a genius at making small numbers mean nothing by utilising the terrain. Bruce had been to the low ground of Loudoun Hill a few days earlier to inspect the ground and find an ideal spot. He noted that the road from Darvel to Straven ran under the flanks of the hill. On wide, firm ground that started to narrow, with a bog encroaching on either side, Bruce saw his chances and had his men dig 3 rows of ditches across the narrowing ground, and Barbour says a bow shot apart. These ditches were to stop or slow down heavy cavalry to avoid them, to gather enough speed to smash through the Scottish position. Ditches also didn't need to be that deep or wide to stop them, since horses who were wearing heavy armour couldn't jump due to the weight. And on the morning of the 10th of May, Bruce marched his 600 men forward into 2 divisions. They set themselves up at the chosen spot, their spear points outstretched. The 3,000 English appeared from the direction of Darvel, and when they saw the Scots lined up front, they began charging their heavy horses at the Scots. To the English, this must have been an easy win. Then they hit the first ditches, and the slaughter began. Some Englishmen were thrown from their horses and smashed to the ground, but then the cavalry regrouped. But then they hit the second ditch, then the third. And by then, confusion and disarray had taken hold of the group. It was chaos. The Scots held firm, making kebabs into any horses or men that happened to ram into them. Then the Scots started to push forward and the English fell backwards. Panic spread throughout the ranks and a lot of men decided the day was lost and began to retreat from the battle. And the Scots charged at the retreating English, cutting down any stragglers. The story of Loudoun Hill would spread like wildfire over Scotland, causing men to flock to Bruce.
That's my job. That's my job. That's my job.